I'm Shane, Ray, Martin. Today you're going to hear from Arul, who's a founder of Circuit Breaker Labs, going after I would say, a really hard problem in AI right now. It's that literally there are chatbots out there who are convincing people or helping people or aiding people to take their own lives. So AI safety is a huge topic. And so Circuit Breaker Labs is building a solution for that. They've already got a contract in place with a very notable therapy platform. They've raised money from incredible funds like A16Z Speedrun and others. So I'm so glad that you guys get to meet one of the co-founders of Circuit Breaker Labs today. Arul, welcome to the show. Tell us your number one tip for founders and investors out there, my friend.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Shane. Really excited to be here with you, and appreciate all of the great work you're doing. I'd say, my number one tip and honestly, personally, like my number one lesson, is to, just go out and ask people for help, ask people questions. I think like when I first started, I was kind of like, oh, like there's this like really big person who could be helpful, but like they don't really know us yet. We don't have a track record. We should wait. Or I should spend like 3 hours crafting like the perfect email with perfect outreach and context and everything on them. And what I found, like initially that hesitation, I think, uh, kept a lot of opportunities away from us. But then when we kind of just like Shirley, like my co-founder and sister and I, we would just start sort of like saying like, hey, like I'm doing this, like, do you have a couple minutes to chat? Or like, could you pass this along to someone else or whatever it is, whether it's through email or LinkedIn, or I think honestly for us just at events, like going up to people and talking to them, even if you think they wouldn't, like you would assume that they wouldn't give you the time of day. Um, some of those connections and and relationships have been the most meaningful for us, the most valuable for us, not just at a personal like mentorship level, although they have, but even at the business, like that's helped us win customers. It's helped us meet investors. It's helped us like meet clinicians and experts to improve our tool. It's helped us with hiring. And so that's something I wish had occurred to me sooner. But it's been tremendously valuable. And I would really push anyone who's on this journey, get out of your comfort zone and just push for that. Just try, just keep asking.
Yes, you got to get out of the comfort zone. So you mentioned customer. What's the story behind the question that you asked to get your customer?
Oh yeah, that's actually a really funny story. So, we were at a conference like a couple months ago, like late last year, and it was like one of the biggest conferences in mental health. And so in between sessions, we were walking around, kind of like the booth exhibition hall area, and we were just about to leave, but then we saw like a booth with, kind of like for like the one of the anchor sponsors of the conference. And this was still like relatively early in our, like very early actually in our journey. And so we kind of had that hesitation where we were like, no, like, like they probably won't know us. Like maybe we should wait a little bit more until like we're more proven or we have more of a brand, more of a name. But my sister and co-founder Shirali was like, no, you know what? Like, let's just try. Let's just go and, talk to them and see what happens. And so we went up to them and then we had these like very startup friendly like flyers that we had printed at home and, on like regular paper and just cut out ourselves. And it was basically like these like one pagers. And so we talked to, their sort of like head of partnerships, who was at the booth and kind of pitched her on what we were doing and, gave her the flyer. And she was really nice. And she was like, yeah, like I'll pass this on, to someone in our organization. And, we kind of thought she was just being polite and, it's probably just going to make it to the trash can. But like lo and behold, a couple of days later, like kind of like their lead of like head of clinical AI, filled out the form on our website and we reached out and it, like blossomed into this like wonderful relationship. They have like a great tool. Like I think I would say like one of the best tools on the market. We've really enjoyed working with them. And I think like, you know, improved their tool quite a bit and we've learned a lot from the relationship as well. And that was one that we were like really just like a split second decision away from not getting because our assumption was like, like let's just not, or like our instinct was like let's not try, like we can go away, whatever. But I think like kind of to the point of that lesson, something that actually like my grandfather used to always love to say is that if you don't ask, the answer is going to be no anyway. So there's literally no downside in just trying to ask. Like it can't be worse than the status quo, right? So yeah, that was like a funny story. I think like one of those classic like scrappy like startup moments, but it was a huge motivator for us too, and I think like really catalyzed a lot of the growth in the company.
That's sage advice from your grandpa for sure. And it sounds like you had, a second or two of insane courage and you just went up to the booth and you just asked. And sometimes it's that simple, right? Like sometimes it's just
Yeah.
like going, it's just showing up, and that's like 90% of the battle. So, congrats to you. I know many more are to come. Let's get into CBL. Let's talk about Circuit Breaker Labs. You guys are doing some really cutting edge, innovative, really interesting things, and the market is hungry for it. People are buying it. People are taking calls. So, what is the mission of Circuit Breaker Labs?
Yeah, our goal is to make AI do no harm. Kind of trying to prevent tragedies like the suicide of Adam Ray and Sewell Setzer, and unfortunately, uh, many more that a lot of people don't even know about. I think there's tremendous hope and potential for what AI can do for mental health. In the United States, we have an absurd access to care crisis. The average wait time for an in-person therapy appointment is more than 60 days, which is just kind of unbelievable in this country in this day and age. And it's getting worse. It's not getting better. We have a provider shortage. Providers are strained, and so I think AI could do a lot of good. AI can handle lower level emotional support. It can make therapy available to a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't be able to access it because of insurance, where they live, or even just stigma. Like there's research that shows people feel less stigma talking to a chatbot versus talking to a human, which you know for better or for worse, that's just the reality. And so we want to build the technology that enables that to happen safely, let those companies scale rapidly and responsibly. And the way that we see that happening is essentially by building, kind of the analog for crash test dummies in cars, right? Like I think when crash test dummies and seat belts and like airbags and all of this safety infrastructure came out in automobiles, that was an enabler for automobiles to proliferate and change our country, change the world in a beneficial way. In many ways, it connected the country, made the country a lot smaller. It was a lot better for commerce, and so likewise, that's what we're trying to do for AI. If we want AI to be able to scale safely, we need to be able we need to prove that the safeguards in place actually work. They're not brittle. They're not failing on nuance or edge cases. And with respect to mental health, that's what we see a lot of the times when suicide is mentioned very directly and very explicitly. Chatbots, or like the guardrails tend to catch that almost kind of like a keyword flag or keyword filter, but when there's any level of clinical nuance, which there always is in the real world, they tend to break down. So they break down with slang, typos, leet speak, metaphors, coded language, cultural, like linguistic differences. And so what we've built, what we've worked with, clinicians and domain experts to do is build, this this suite of hyper realistic simulations of the way that real users are interacting with chatbots in the real world, not just in a single like one turn conversation like in a like standard benchmark, but over long like dozens or hundreds of turn multi-turn conversation talking about lots of different things, and pressure testing, stress testing their guardrails to make sure we find any of those vulnerabilities before a real user does.
And that's where the name crash test dummy for AI comes from. Essentially, you are creating the analogs in order for people to determine whether or not their AI is safe or it could potentially harm someone. Is that accurate?
100%. Yeah, exactly. Like as you said earlier,
Okay.
like chatbots are validating or sometimes even encouraging suicidal ideation. Like there's been suicide coaching cases. And so, yeah, we want to make sure we find all those vulnerabilities before, the system gets out.
Okay, so you mentioned the therapy platform as a customer. You're talking to a lot of other potential customers. So is the customer like the giant LLM companies, or is the customer like a therapy platform who's like using chatbots already that needs to test it that way it's safe and secure? What like tell me about the market and how big this actually could be.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's the latter. Like we're really serving that application layer who's building, who's taking GPT or Claude or whatever it may be, and potentially like fine tuning it, connecting it to their own, knowledge base, building their own guardrails on top of it. Um, and we're serving that group for a multitude of reasons. Like one, like the foundation models, they're great. Like they're making strides. They're trying to improve their safeguards, but at the end of the day, like their product is a stochastic, probabilistic model that will always have these vulnerabilities. But when you go to the application layer, like I said, like they're fine tuning it, they're building all of this infrastructure around it, and each of those small changes in the harness can affect the model in sort of like unpredictable ways. But that's really where like the final line of defense should be. So, company A's GPT chatbot versus company B's GPT chatbot, even if it's the same underlying foundation model, can behave in very different ways. And again, like that's like the last mile. So they're reaching consumers. That's kind of like our last chance to defend against these vulnerabilities. So that we found like that's the part of the market that's best, not only that they care about the problem, but they're also best equipped to solve the problem. And so those are the partners that we've chosen to work with. We like, one of our big customers right now is a therapy chatbot, and of course, like, or emotional support chatbot. But like that sort of emotional support therapy chatbot market, of course, is like sensitive to the problem. But we found that actually, like, even beyond that, a lot of like general purpose chatbots that are maybe meant for like for fun, or like these sort of like digital companion tools and things like that, where you wouldn't necessarily expect uh, users to be having these sorts of conversations. Those companies are also really sensitive to the problem. Looking at like the Adam Rain case that was with ChatGPT, the Sewell Setzer case was with Character AI. There were cases with Gemini, with Replica, with all sorts of different models, not just ones that were meant for emotional support. And people have a tendency to engage in really long conversations on those platforms, and when a conversation is long, like invariably it can become emotional. And also at the technical level, a really long conversation um, experiences something called like context pollution, where no matter what, like no matter how good the guardrails are, the model is just a lot less likely to adhere to its guardrails on the 100th turn of the conversation versus the 10th turn of the conversation. So like those sorts of general purpose chatbots that lend themselves to really long conversations are extra vulnerable and have like a broader sort of risk surface for this problem.
I love when we get a little technical here. I love
Yeah.
it. This is great. This is great. Okay, so a lot of, just building on everything that you're sharing, a lot of investors out
Yeah.
there, a lot of founders, are talking a lot about how can we build something that Claude or GPT can't just like replicate overnight. And I know you have your safety scoring engine that in a way I kind of see it almost as like a technical moat that makes you guys differentiated and quite powerful for what you're doing. Can you explain what exactly, just one more technical question. Can you explain what the safety scoring engine is and why it's important?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I think I can, like, it might be helpful to start with sort of what like the default, state of the art, so to speak, is, and that's using an LLM as a judge. Basically, everyone is using that for evaluating, chatbot responses, not just like in the mental health domain, but kind of across the board. And there's a number of problems with that. In the research, there are like documented biases where, an LLM judge has a bias where it prefers content generated by other LLMs. It prefers longer content versus shorter content, regardless of the substance. Interestingly, like if you ask a chatbot, like should I pick option A, B, or C? No matter how you reorganize it, it always has a bias for whatever's in the first position, like whatever option A is, which is weird, like not really explained. But in practice, like that kind of bias is just not going to cut it, especially for a domain like mental health. And honestly, if you think about it, it's sort of like you know grading your own homework, like you're using an LLM to evaluate another LLM. And at the end of the day, like a language model is just that. It's like a generative language model where it's kind of, predicting like the next character token, which clearly is like, valuable in many ways. But if you're trying to get this sort of reproducible, explainable, auditable score, numerical score, um, a sort of more, a more qualitative language model won't work. You can, like, people can go out and try this themselves too, where if give ChatGPT like some statement and say like, can you rate this from 0 to 1? If you ask the same thing 10 times, you're going to get different results. Like it might say like, oh yeah, this is 0.9 the first time. But the second time you ask, it might be like, actually, this is like a 0.5. And that variance is just, unacceptable. And so the scoring engine that we went out and developed is deterministic. So we're not using LLM as a judge. And so we do have the ability to assign like a meaningful, reproducible numerical score. And the way that our sort of scoring criteria are developed means that our score is explainable. So if you're a developer building a tool and your chatbot gets a score of 0.6, you can pin down exactly why it was a 0.6 and what you need to do to remediate it, which is super valuable just at a practical level for developers to use. But also at the same time, since we're not using a large language model, the quality of the scoring is better, but it's also computationally a lot less expensive. We sort of developed like this proprietary ensemble of machine learning techniques, and like it's like a patent pending approach. And so because of that, like because of the models that we've developed and that we're using, we can run much faster and much less expensively. Which beyond like the value in scoring a single statement, that also means we can score way more cases for the same amount of money and same amount of time, or much longer conversations. Like again, going back to that point of context pollution, and that's really important because we're looking for edge cases here, right? So just like doing like 50 tests of like a short conversation is not enough. You need to be able to run thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of tests continuously across like wide linguistic breadth, diversity, different kinds of cases to really find and poke holes in the model and patch that pre-production before it ever makes to a user.
That's so good. And we know what happens when students grade their own homework. At
Yeah,
least yeah,
exactly.
it's like there's a huge opportunity to increase the quality of your LLM, ensure that, people are
Yeah.
safe, but also I just also wonder if there's an ability to use circuit breaker labs as well to not just help the person heal sooner, but also maybe there are other hidden benefits that we just don't know that you'll encounter and what problems you'll solve just by building, by going, by selling, by being out there. To your point of the story at the conference, just like asking. And it sounds
Yeah.
like you guys have a nice beachhead. You've really broken in the mental health space, but their AI is not going anywhere. So the market I see here is potentially massive because it's
Yeah.
just growing so fast. It's growing so fast. And it's very, very exciting. Do you think that, you've broken into the mental health as sort of like your gateway or your beachhead market? You've like landed on the beach. Would would you guys ever go after like healthcare next or like financial services or where else could circuit breaker break into?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're starting with mental health because it's personal to us. I think the problem is most visible there, but some of the companies that we work with, or are talking to, are already asking us like, hey, like mental health is really valuable. This is a really important problem, but like to your point, what about broader clinical AI? Like if we're building an AI tool for for primary care or for cardiology or radiology or whatever it may be, there's this huge promise of AI across healthcare. So could the tool be applied there? Could it be applied, like you said, to like like financial services or government or really any high stakes domain? They're sensitive to the problem, and our tool, like because of the way that our scoring engine and our simulations are developed, um, they're highly generalizable. They're tuned for mental health right now because that's the way we've tuned them. But really, any domain, like it's just a matter of changing what we feed into the tool, and it can be readily applied there. So I think um, definitely there are expansion opportunities there. And like I said, like our goal is to build the infrastructure that enables AI to scale rapidly and responsibly. And so we would love to serve anyone who's building any domain that is kind of sensitive to these problems. And at the same time, like what we're seeing with models is they're becoming more and more capable. Like Claude Fable, for example, was just released, and there are anecdotally we've seen sort of like some backsliding in safety guardrails in some cases, but my hope is that over time, like safety is going to improve at the model, like in the model layer, but capabilities are always going to increase faster. And so with every new model release, that kind of vulnerability surface expands too. And so, yeah, I think there's like, you hit the nail on the head. There's a huge opportunity for really any kind of AI that's human facing.
Definitely. I know you guys will find it too. In fact, I actually think it'll find you as you continue to just take one step at a time. Real quick, you mentioned the speed of AI. So how do we continue to innovate? That way we don't lose to China and other
Yeah.
adversaries and things like that, but also remain safe. Is that possible
Yeah.
to do both?
100%, I think it's possible. And I think we do have to do it. Like, to your point about great power competition. Like I think Claude Mythos, of course, that was focused on like cyber capabilities, but I think that's a prime example of why we need to be doing this. If the U.S. could have said like we're gonna put a pause on AI development, or we're gonna create a bunch of requirements that make it impossible to innovate, and so like Anthropic wouldn't have developed Claude Mythos, but DeepSeek or Quen would have. And do you think like Quen or DeepSeek were going to do Project Glasswing and say we're doing a limited, phase out release only with trusted partners? Like, no, it would be, broadly available at some point. And we saw Mythos was able to find 0-day vulnerabilities in like every major operating system, all kinds of major software. And so that could have been really dangerous. So I think that's strong evidence for why we need to enable and push for rapid innovation. But I don't think like I don't think safety actually is mutually exclusive with scaling. I think like there a lot of the time that's kind of like an assumption or misconception. But um, in the application layer, for example, I think safety is going to be one of the core differentiators at a certain point. Chatbots are becoming, commoditized, especially like as models become more and more available. It's easier for people to, vibe code and spin up a system. So consumers are going to be spoiled for choice, right? Like if you're a consumer looking for a therapy chatbot, you're going to have like thousands and thousands of options within a couple of years, or maybe honestly, maybe even a couple of months. And so then how do you decide if you're a patient or if you're a parent deciding what chatbot should my child use, or if you're a clinician saying like, whether I like it or not, my patients are using chatbots, which one should I recommend? And clinicians come to us with that question all the time. The way, one of the key differentiators and like key factors you're going to use to make your choice is like, how safe is this tool? Do they have external testing? Have they been audited? Can they prove their safety? Or even like, regardless of the outcome, just something as simple as like, do they care enough about this problem to try and talk to like a third party for testing? And so I think like, my hope, and like we constantly try to talk about this, we try to do as much education as we can. My hope is that you know there's going to be a shift where consumers will just demand trust. It's not going to be optional. And we're like Illinois just came out with a bill sort of mandating like third party auditing. There's all kinds of bills across states and at the federal level, and I think this is like one of the areas of bipartisan consensus where people are concerned about this problem. And so with those regulatory tailwinds and consumers just becoming more and more aware, and seeing these terrible cases of what happens when there's not pressure testing and safety, consumers are going to demand it, push for it, and it'll become an imperative for companies developing the application layer that they have to be safe. And I think like when there's a business use case or a business case for it, somehow things always tend to align and work themselves out. And so that's my hope, and I think that's what we're seeing happen, beginning to happen already.
It's a great sort of vision that you have. I think so too. It's almost going to be like how cybersecurity was like tiny, and then
Yeah,
it became like the norm. Like if you're a firm, over 1,000 people or even over 10 people, you have to have some sort of protection for yourself from outside threats. And I think AI is going to
100%.
become so big that like you're also going to need protection for how your AI is operating. And so there's something really, really powerful here. Tell us just as we wrap up, tell us what is coming in the month of July for Circuit Breaker Labs? What's on the docket for you guys in the next month or so?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think we have like you know a lot of these like exciting customer conversations. I think some more partnerships that we're hopefully going to be able to be more public about soon, which we're really excited about. I think also like at the technical level, um, there's a lot of exciting updates in the pipeline, and that we've been working on hard at work on for a while with the tool to increase our breadth, so that you're testing for more and more edge cases, making the conversations a lot more realistic and able to go really, really long. I think that's what we're most excited about. Like our advisor, Dr. Keith Sakata, one of our clinical advisors, is sort of an expert in this emerging, I don't want to call it a diagnosis, but condition of like AI enabled, AI facilitated psychosis. And we've seen tragic cases where, AI is sort of like causing like delusions in people, and it's leading to them going out and doing really bad things to themselves and others in the real world. And so, but modeling psychosis is a really tough technical challenge because it's not as simple as like suicidal ideation where someone is just like explicitly asking for bad information, and that manifests over thousands and thousands and thousands of turns of a conversation. But I think it's one of the biggest gaps and vulnerability points for these models. And so we've been really hard at work with Dr. Sakata and a bunch of different clinicians and clinical experts, to come up with the best psychosis models possible, or simulations possible. And I think that's like when we push that out and release those on customers' tools and customers' models, there's going to be some really interesting results. So we're excited for that, and I honestly think that's going to be a huge breakthrough.
Let's go one step at a time. Yes, man. Keep shipping, keep going, keep like just taking small steps. They really, really add up. You guys have been so wonderful to have in the accelerator. It's so much fun. When I see your guys' names on the calendar, I'm really excited to talk to you guys because I know that you're like sponges. You're absorbing information and then you're executing, going, 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 going. So for those people who are interested in AI safety, investors, other founders, connect with Circuit Breaker Labs on LinkedIn. Where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn, like our page is up there. Shirley and I are both on there. You can also just go to our website, circuitbreakerlabs.ai. That has more information about us, more ways to contact us. The email, like just my first name or Shirley's first name at circuitbreakerlabs.ai. Um,
Cool.
Really excited to connect with anyone who cares about this problem, anyone who wants to learn about this problem, whether you're a researcher, clinician, developer, whoever you are, parent, patient, whoever you are. We're really passionate about this problem. We want to hear from you. And I think hearing from as many different people as possible helps us make the tool better and better and more valuable. So really excited to meet everyone, chat with anyone. And Shane, thank you so much for what you're doing in the accelerator. I think it's a great cohort. Really admire what everyone in the cohort is building, and it's already been tremendously valuable for us. So we're learning a lot. We're having a lot of fun, and really excited.
Well said. Can't top that. All right, we'll catch you in the next episode. See you, everyone.